And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Holy Crap, the Vlogcast. The Vlogcast that comes from a skeptical point of view to answer some of the questions of why. This Vlogcast started as a combination of spite and the Streisand effect when some people from high school that I knew were using Facebook to post stuff that was factually wrong, and that's the way that they wanted to do Facebook, so that's the way that they were doing it. I decided that my way of using Facebook was to correct them, which they said was wrong because that's not the way that they wanted to do it. Part of this is also to follow through with the old adage that sometimes the journey is more important than the destination. I'm known as Shujin Tribble all over the place online. You can find me under that name pretty much everywhere. I was born into a Roman Catholic family in Brooklyn, New York, raised on Long Island. I currently reside outside of Buffalo, New York, and I'm an unabashed atheist, considering Pastafarianism, Jediism. I'll probably come up with something that's German or something, but I can't speak it worth the life of me, so we'll see what happens. Welcome down to the show, everybody. So let's get everybody introduced. Starting from over the border just north of me into Ontario, good evening, good morning, heretic woman.
Good evening. So I'm in Ontario, Canada, and I started out in the United Church of Canada, which is actually pretty liberal. Had female pastors for decades now, and they're cool with the gay marriage thing and all that. But then, teenagers do stupid things, and I joined a Calvinist sect, which I really don't recommend. Wasn't one of my smarter decisions. But I got better, and now I've been an atheist for 26 years, and I spend every bit of time that I can all over the internet trying to educate and be a pain in the you-know-what to every theist I can find.
Join the group. From the Midwest, good morning. Well, actually, for you, it's good night. Good evening. Bridget Fitch.
Hi, I'm Bridget Fitch. I was born and raised in the South. That's where my funky accent comes from. I grew up Church of Christ, got over it in 2003, and speak out now against all things patriarchy and all things theism, and try to educate people on the harm that religion does.
Moving to the south, over to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Good morning, Joey.
Morning, folks. My name's Joe. Born and raised into an Irish Catholic family in Chicago, Illinois. Spent 8 years in the military. Currently living as a graphic designer and atheist in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Okay. Moving to the right, outside of the shadow of the capital, Unrenowned Tech.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Unrenowned Tech. I grew up in a mixed religious background, studied several religions, practiced a couple others, and came to the inevitable conclusion that all comes from critical thinking and skepticism, that it's so full of crap. Which our name of our show has inside of it. It's very aptly named. And yes, today I am wearing pants.
And finally, jumping over the pond this morning to France. Good morning, Joseph.
Good morning. My name's Joseph, and I do everything I can to promote individual critical thought.
And we can go with that. Easy enough. Simple. Good evening, everybody. And, of course, for those of you that are joining us this morning, this evening, wherever it is for you, first off, wow, it's dark stupid in the morning for some of us, ain't it?
Yep.
And
6:12.
It's dark stupid in the morning. And Katie, we do see you over there. For those of you that are joining us live, please, by all means, feel free to take advantage of the question and answer system so we can go ahead and say hello to you too and answer some of the questions that you've got or some points that you'd like to throw at us. By all means, feel free. And yes, I guess it's kind of technically official. This is the Crap Crew.
No.
I just have no idea what we're going to turn this into as far as a T-shirt is concerned. But Heretic Woman, you were proudly wearing the Glory Hole Studios official T-shirt. How did that feel to have one of those walking around?
It
Taking
was
into a
cool.
donut that was dribbling down your chin.
I did actually have a lemon cream filled donut at the Glory Hole Donuts, so you know. But I was walking around. I went to an atheist brunch at a fairly, you know, not so dingy restaurant. So, and yeah, it was pretty cool walking around with my giant Glory Hole penis, you know, top on.
Thing. There you go.
Yep.
I'm dressed appropriately to representing
Uh-huh.
spaghetti monster t-shirt.
Ah,
There you
see,
go.
I got Jack the Ripper on today, but you know.
Did you hear the news from the underwater researchers that they discovered a new underwater aquatic life form? And they're dubbing it the flying spaghetti monster. They have no idea what it is, but it looks like a meatball with noodles.
Oh, sweet.
Our God!
And all I can think is if I were in like one of these members of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster,
Mhm.
upon hearing that news, the first thought, the first feeling I would have would be to run up to the nearest Christian or Muslim or whatever and go, "Look, you can actually see my God."
Yeah.
He's back! He's back!
Awesome.
And
I'm gonna
it's
have to look that up.
Of
Yeah.
course, the Flying Spaghetti Monster might be friends with Cthulhu, so you might have to walk a thin line there, you know.
Well,
Shujin,
there is that.
Shujin,
Yeah.
you know what has to be done now?
No, I don't.
Yes.
Squirrel.
Squirrel.
I
You know you want to.
I will explain very quickly. Short version, the little one and I were coming back from watching Ant-Man again. I got it into my head to, however we got to it, the question had come up about squirrels probably because the Fantastic Four, Squirrel Girl beat Doctor Doom, don't ask. And then it became, squirrels, this is the king of the squirrels, that would be Markiplier. Hi, Mark. And I then got it into my head, well, I can't ask Google what the king of the squirrels would be, because that would be too easy. So I asked it, is there a squirrel god? Yes. Apparently,
Yes, his
according
name
to
is
Google,
Foamy.
yes, there is. No, it's
Yes.
not. If you have an
Foamy is the
Android,
Lord and Master of Foamy Card Cult.
yes. If you have an Android device, when you get the opportunity, not now, later, ask it. You know what? Bring your device over close to your monitor. Go ahead. Just do it right here. Come on. Don't be shy. Bring it a little bit close. Good. All right. Turn the microphone. Turn your speaker up just a little bit. Good. Right there. Okay. Now watch this. Okay, Google. Is there a squirrel god? Okay. Now that you guys have had yourselves a good laugh about that one, enjoy that. And we will get started with the show because, trust me, there are a lot of people who I'm really hoping are going to finally, write or leave a voicemail or something finally, because that's going to be freaking funny as hell. You'll see. Trust me. Anyway, let's get things started over here with your 5-minute freestyle with apologies to Noah Heath and Lucinda from The Scathing Atheist. Time starts now. So the piece I put out there is, why is satire important? Now, a couple of people who have been following me on Facebook saw a post that I put up that I basically reposted on Facebook from somebody else, and it was basically, if you're Christian here in the United States, how would you feel if there were police cars that had public money used for bumper stickers that said, "In Allah we trust," or if the money said that instead, or if public money was used in schools for students to be taught the Quran. And there are a couple of other things in there, but basically it was a point of kind of pointing out, look, all the stuff that you're worried about happening, that's what we worry about as atheists all the time. We're always worried about that happening. So, this is what happens when you get religion mixed up into stuff that it's not supposed to be. Like, for instance, our system of government here in the U.S. No, it's different in a lot of other countries, but for us here in the U.S., the First Amendment to the Constitution, the piece that actually says this is codified information for what the people are supposed to have, which was kind of a radical thing. I mean, they wrote up this whole big structure for what the government is supposed to be like, and then suddenly, hey, you know what? We should really put in a couple of things over here that the people are supposed to be able to do, not what the government is supposed to be able to do. That was kind of radical. And the first piece of it all is the piece that, yes, gets misquoted and quoted and used out of context and pulled apart and loosely translated. Believe what you want to believe. But the government, capital G government, ain't supposed to be involved. Ne'er the twain shall meet, as the expression has gone. But there are people who constantly riddle at it and say, sure, why not? Why can't I? I mean, I'm going to be whatever denomination of whatever religious faith that I am. You can't take that away from me. It's going to color everything that I do. And somebody basically used that argument and said, look, you shouldn't be attacking Christians with this kind of thing. Hello, wait, no. This wasn't an attack. This was satire. This was holding up a funhouse mirror and showing you what happens when you see your own stuff reflected back at you in a way that you would not normally have seen it. You really want it to be that way? Because that's what we see. Why is satire important? Simple. Because it's a mirror. The same way that science fiction is a mirror for humanity in general. Satire is used to make a similar point, to show you what you look like to us in a way that you will actually understand. Sometimes it's comedic, in which case, hey, I'm all for it. You don't have to go any much further than, I believe his name is John Oliver? You might want to check that one out. Or, of course, there are a whole bunch of others that have done it wonderfully. You want to go back to the 80s on HBO? You've got Not Necessarily the News. You want to go online? You've got The Onion. You want to go over to Canada and CBC? You've got This Hour Has 22 Minutes. There are a host of different areas where they will take the news, they will flip it on its head, they will turn it backwards for you, they will slightly distort it so that it will make sense, it will get through to you. That's why it's important, because if you can't see you the way we see you, you're not going to understand, you're not going to want to change. Do you want to have "In Allah We Trust" on the back of the police cars? Why not? What's so wrong with it? It's all the same God, right? I mean, we've already been through this. The top three, they all stem from the same piece. So why not? I'll tell you why not. It's the same reason that we don't want you to put "In God We Trust" on our money or infest it into our lives. Because it's wrong. Because over 200 years ago, they knew it was the wrong idea then. And we're just trying to explain to you, it's still wrong today. This is episode number 78. Holy geez, we're really racking up the numbers over here. I've just suddenly realized it earlier this week as I'm looking over the notes. I'm like, wow, 78 episodes? Wow, when the hell did that happen? I'm liking this. And the title is the Safety On? We're going to be talking about something that I pushed back because I was having a little bit of a hard time understanding it, which is trigger words and what my wife used to call emotional landmines. And we're going to be dealing with all that. A couple quick pieces of information. First off, of course, Heretic Woman, you had a fun and wonderful meeting.
I did.
So, really quickly, who is it that you got the opportunity to see and meet and hang out with briefly?
A wonderful woman by the name of Ensaf Hader, who, of course, is Rafe Badawi's wife. And what an inspiration. Rafe is an inspiration, and she's tiny. She's smaller than me again. She's like not quite Lucinda size. She's a little taller than Lucinda, but the rest of her is Lucinda sized. Just this tiny little, unbelievably strong woman, and it was a real honor to spend a few minutes. It was tricky to talk with her because my French is horrible, and hers isn't all that great either. So she, it was a challenge. But what really stood out for me during her speech, she had a translator, so she would speak in Arabic, and the translator would do a paragraph at a time. She said that she is not brave. She said, "I am not brave. I have courage because of all of you." And that just, like, I get teary just thinking about it. It just, like, wow. So that's the kind of just beautiful person she is. I also got to meet his children, who are just adorable. And I got my copy of Rafe's book, which is called Rafe Badawi, 1,000 Lashes Because I Say What I Think. And it is a collection of the very blog posts that landed him in jail. And so it's not very big because, unfortunately, he got thrown in jail before he got a chance to write a whole lot. But and Ensaf signed it for me as well, and I hope someday that I will get Rafe to sign it for me as well, because he ought to. So that was a really profound experience for me, and meeting Professor Krauss was very, very cool. Same with Mr. Deity, but that was the highlight for me, was to give Ensaf a hug and to tell her that we are inspired by her.
I know it's it may be a little vain of me, but I sincerely hope that you passed along all the well wishes from all of us and all of the vloggers.
I did. Yeah, as best that I could. As I said, my French is terrible, but yes, I absolutely told her that all of us are so much in support of her, and that we're inspired by her. I told her that we are inspired by her, and we are, because she is a big inspiration to me, as is Rafe, and all of the writers and bloggers in Bangladesh. I got to meet another writer from Bangladesh who knew most of the poor people who've been killed, and just a young kid who, he's here in Canada, and he's still trying to get the message out and speak for the people that can no longer speak. So that's amazing. And when we do the plugging at the end of the show, I'm gonna tell everybody how they can send a postcard to Rafe. I have an address that you can put in the show notes, but there's a campaign just to send very simple hello, because most of the time they won't throw that away. So I'll talk a bit about more of that at the end of the show too. So
to cover that, of course, I know full well, and we can probably full well understand. At this point, of course, she is without him at this point, yeah?
That's right, yes.
As of the recording of this show, it has now been 3 years, 2 months, 13 days since Rafe was unjustly incarcerated for thought crime. We're still hoping for him, man.
Someday he's going to come and sign my book.
I hope he gets to do a hell of a lot more than that. But yes, that's a whole other piece for later. Anyway, for 5 of the countries that have been paying attention to us, of course, thank you. When I'm running out of countries, believe it or not, on the list, I feel really good about that. So, for Papua New Guinea, hello. And as I understood it, for Papua New Guinea, there are about 3 different languages that are possible, and sign language, if I remember right, is one of them, and that doesn't translate too well for audio. For Indonesia, Halu. Croatia, Bok. Georgia, this was the one I was having a hard time trying to practice for myself. Gamarjopa, I believe is it. And I know that I'm going to piss off some people, and I'm sorry. I finally get around to friends. Bonjour. I know. I speak with a horrid accent, but that's because I'm from Brooklyn. Leave me alone.
You should have let Yosef do it.
You know what? How would you like to go ahead and say good morning to everyone? Be my guest, Joseph, and please, by all means, feel free to piss off the Quebecois.
That's not hard. It's not a challenge.
Not speaking with a Quebec accent is enough. So, bonjour la faute.
And heretic woman, sure, go ahead. Piss off the Quebecois. Go ahead, say it.
Yeah. Your puny French signs are silly, and it doesn't matter how big your English is because you're still a bunch of whining twits.
And poutine is dégueulasse.
And of course, this whole thing just went right over my head.
Poutine is gross. I'm sorry. Yuck. And no matter what you like, the bloc is not going to win the election. So, meh.
We will discuss political stuff in a near future show. I've been thinking about that one, and we'll get around to that momentarily.
It's like someone trying to kill themselves who's constantly failing but always reloading the gun.
Yeah!
I don't know why these darn bullets don't keep working. It's like, well, if you stop loading the gun with blanks...
Oh no, they're English bullets. English doesn't work in Quebec,
I cannot find my brain.
Yeah, I will be more than happy to explain for everybody a little bit later what the whole infighting is with Canada, the Quebecois, and the.
J'ai perdu mon tête.
Well, hey, Sujin.
Yes,
Sujin,
sir.
If it's anything like the episode of the IT Crowd, where like the fire extinguisher caught fire, the bullets probably fired themselves while they were still in the packaging.
No, it's not that. I promise, though, it's going to be all kinds of fun. For those of you that know anything about the Subway series in New York City, that kind of thing, yeah, you get the idea. The Cowboys, the Dallas Cowboys, and like everybody else. Yeah, the Yankees and everybody else. It's just infighting, but we'll come back to that another time. Anyway, the show topic for tonight, like I said, was going to be triggers, trigger warnings, and unfortunately, I will admit, I'm a little bit under a rock for a lot of different pieces. So there's some stuff that has been going on recently in a lot of circles for trigger warnings being abused is, I guess, the best way that it's been explained to me. Bridget, I'm gonna bring you into, because you were one of the people that was kind of suggesting that we go ahead through with this one. So how would you typify it, codify it, explain what this whole thing has become that I was apparently completely oblivious to?
And a description of what trigger warnings are actually would be helpful.
Yes.
Okay. I will start at the beginning then. What a trigger warning is, for those who are not familiar with the term, it's a courtesy that people on the internet will post before posting some content that could be disturbing to people with trauma. For example, if you have someone who was a victim of rape, then there might be a warning ahead of time saying, caution, this story contains references to rape or whatever the trigger happens to be, mass shootings, violence, etc. Where this has become contentious is this started out on Tumblr, as a courtesy to people who might have post-traumatic stress disorder from violence, to kind of like a spoiler alert. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with spoiler alerts that are on the internet.
Well, kind of like the warnings on video games. They back in the late 80s when they started putting warnings, hey, this game has flashing lights, it may cause an epileptic seizure.
Right. And where this has gotten contentious is it's gone overboard to the point where schools are starting to let teachers go, and this is in college level, for not providing warnings for disturbing content on things like world history. And as we know, world history can be very disturbing, but there are young people now that are 19, 20, 21 that will threaten to sue the school for not disclosing ahead of time icky content in classes. It has gotten to the point where if someone uses a phrase like "cut that out" when they're joking, they'll say you didn't do a trigger warning for the word cut, and that could trigger cutters, people who self-harm. And so you have two extremes now between people who what I would call precious snowflakes that are, claiming that they're easily traumatized by disturbing information, versus people who support free speech for all, and there has to be a happy medium. As far as myself personally, I do understand what triggers are. I do have things that trigger post-traumatic stress disorder, but some people have taken it too far to where they will look for a single word and claim that it triggers them, and you can't shelter people from everything. There are times when I feel like it is valid in an unexpected place, like if you're looking at, say, pictures of, fuzzy kitties, and all of a sudden you see someone beheaded, and that can cause someone who has been a prior victim of crime to become triggered and have, symptoms of PTSD. But I feel like when you start labeling everything as a possible trigger, then it trivializes it. I feel
kind of like saying trigger warning for the word trigger warning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so there has to be a happy medium between, giving people a heads up when it can legitimately cause harm, and treating people like precious snowflakes that can't handle anything at all. And it seems like, as a society in the United States, we have people who are polarized on both sides. And so you have people who are going, oh, don't say anything disturbing or bother me, and you have other people who are throwing it in people's faces. And, there needs to be some context, I feel like. My daughter was telling me of an example of a law class where they're, teaching, law students about rape, and they're not allowed to use the word rape or violate because it can trigger people. How do you discuss criminal law without using those words? You can't.
Involuntary ingress?
Well, it ends up becoming a problem with free speech, and the thing about universities is they have always been a bastion of academic freedom and freedom of thought, and now they're having to self-censor because they're being sued or fired because they're using these words.
Well, and to me, and I mean, I'm a survivor of abuse, and I have things that freak me the hell out too sometimes, but you have to own it. And there becomes a point where being uber sensitive like that is actually detrimental to the people who are claiming they need this protection. Because if you can't function in a normal environment, and to the point that you have, like, somebody can't say cut it out, like, that's you. And as Beth said in the Q&A, you know, she says, I'm a cutter, and if that word triggers me, I need to be in the nut house, not online.
Yeah, you need to be in therapy or something.
Yeah, like not necessarily the nut house, but you have bigger issues if hearing one word is going to harm you to that degree. Then you need to be seeking other assistance and not, you know, trying to tell everyone on the internet that they can't say a word. Like, you've got to own it. You've got to. Good morning, Chris.
I think context is important. Like, if you're taking a women's studies class, then expect women's issues to come up and maybe violence against women to come up. I don't feel like you need to be warned about that.
No, and like I say, world history, like, come on. Yeah. If you're taking college level history, you will have taken a course or two in the past. You ought to know that people in history were, you know, really violent.
Forget history, they're still violent.
Well, yeah, exactly. But I mean, there was a lot more blood and guts, you know, in the past. And war, like, if you're going to teach about a war, you might have to talk about somebody getting killed at some point if you're going to talk about a war. Like, exactly. It's just, to me, it's a no-brainer, and to me, it's kind of a passive-aggressive way of dominance in a way.
I think it is. One thing my daughter brought attention to me tonight, and I'll be quiet after this, is now on Tumblr, people are starting to label things as PDA, that's public display of affection, but treat it as a trigger for people who maybe have been molested or abused or whatever, and they're labeling things as PDA for simple things like a mother and daughter holding hands, or two friends hugging each other, or someone playing a love song. And that is ridiculous.
Yeah, that is ridiculous.
Okay, so before we go any much further, yes, we
let Chris talk.
Yes.
Oh, it's all right. I've not got much to say. Hi, welcome all. This is Chris from England, who's only just woken up. Yeah, I was just wanting to jump in on Bridget's point on where she mentioned in the law class not being able to mention things like rape. The thing is, if you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be dealing with intense details and evidence regarding all kinds of nasty crimes, in the same way that doctors are dealing with stuff regarding unpleasant and nasty diseases. If you are not prepared to handle that, you should not be there.
Mm-hmm.
Your Honor, I can't. My client can't be prosecuted because the prosecutor is going to use words that are trigger words, and if they do that, then he's going to have a break, and the whole case has got to go out the window. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye. Yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah, this is a piece that I kind of made reference to once before. When we're talking with people, when we're communicating, and it doesn't matter what language it is, every language is built on phonemes of some kind. Every spoken language, I should say. And those get strung together in a way that is understood, generally speaking, from one to another. If we start using terms that are unfamiliar, clunky, inelegant, shall we say, imprecise, we lose the entire use of language to explain things. Mm-hmm. Now, yeah, we can go ahead and we can say that somebody. I'm gonna use an example from TV from way back when that some people may get. Some people may decide to call it an unlocking device. I would call it a key. Tech, I'm kind of wondering, do you actually get the reference?
I don't know what it was on TV, but I've heard people say things like that, like calling a key an unlocking device. I've actually heard people say that not in my youth. I mean, like in the last 5 years. I have heard people call projectors light boxes. was like, no. Just because it's a box that throws light on a wall doesn't make it a light box. That's a completely different technology.
Yep. And
I've heard all sorts of shit.
Yeah, for those that are kind of wondering, believe it or not, I'm stealing from the pilot episode, believe it or not, of Buck Rogers. Yes, the TV show. Yes, spandex. Shut up. I'm a child of the 80s.
I love Buck Rogers. I love Buck Rogers.
Yeah, it was cheese, but the point of it is, if we start using clunky terminology that is imprecise, that does not clearly identify what something is, you lose the ability to steer someone over to whatever it is, whatever concept it is that you want them to understand, to share with them. And yes, it can be disturbing for some people to hear terms that are highly charged, that are highly emotional, that are very visceral. And I'm sorry.
But no matter how you say it, it just it leads to the same act or whatever. I don't.
Yeah, interestingly, Shujin, you mentioned that about using clunky language in there, and I take the point. In certain situations, though, I think the way we use language is very important, and this is probably not going to be the right time for me to say it, having only just woken up. But that I think we also have to acknowledge in some situations that our language is historically biased, and gives rise to sort of terminology specifically around things like gender, that are built into the language from an earlier age. And when you start trying to use things like gender neutral or other neutral to kind of terminology, it can at first feel rather clunky and leave you sort of searching for words. And it's just a matter of a sort of a shifting of perspective.
There is that. The funny part of it is the way that you're saying that now. I'm kind of wondering if I'll take a look and see if Callie's awake. Maybe she'd like to pop in on this too, just for exactly that.
Yeah, that was who I was coming to mind.
Yeah, I'll take a look and see what I can figure on this one in a couple of seconds. Now, I want to kind of take this around in a slightly different fashion for a second, because I was talking about how clunky language can be. We've also seen where being incredibly precise to the point of absurdity legal documentation can be.
Don't get me started on that crap.
Yeah.
I had to learn how to read some of that for the custody battle. They had 15 lines of text when it would only take, in casual conversation, one sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they have to cover every possible exception, misunderstanding too.
Yeah, and if you're reading a technical or legal document, it can make you realise how many kinds of assumptions are built into everyday language, and everyday thought. That our language is not, English is not particularly built for this kind of thing. When you see the lengths that have to be gone to sort of specify every kind of contingency and nail something down to the absolute sort of particulars.
Yeah, look at car mechanics, or like in Sujin and mine's case, IT support. You know, very specific languages so that we can properly identify parts and problems and everything else. And we didn't get paid, and car mechanics don't get paid the money that they get paid to be able to do the 5-minute fix. We're getting paid because we have the knowledge that leads us to the 5-minute fix. You know.
Well, you can speak for yourself, man. I'm not doing that stuff right now. That's for damn sure. Right now, I couldn't tell you the difference between a dip switch and a toggle switch and a double throw switch, except that I know that I would see that in the Frankenstein movie. I'm pretty sure about that one. Big old knife switch on the wall.
It sounds like ice cream flavors.
Well, maybe somebody could tell us how to fix broken icing on a cake.
There's, yeah. Don't expect that one to be explained anytime soon, people. Don't. But just trust me, there's a story behind it. Oh my god. Yes. So the going to the lengths of absurdity with legality is absolutely insane. It's absolutely bananas. I mean, here's a great opportunity, and yes, that would be wonderful. By the way, somebody knows who I'm talking to. They know who I'm talking to. Don't worry about it. You don't have to worry about it.
Hi, Beth.
Yes, and by the way, yeah, all you guys are watching. Thank you.
Yeah, she's just blowing up the Q&A, so I figured. Oh, hi, Beth.
I was trying to remember what it was I was going to. What the hell? You know what? I don't even remember what the hell. I had a couple of somethings that were going on. I'm sorry. I've had a number of things this past week, the last couple of days, that have been really, really on my brain. So I've got a couple of things that are continuing to bounce around inside my head and losing track of things. I'm sorry. All right. So as far as language is concerned, it can get a little hair-raising. You know what? Actually, a perfect example. Let me go this angle for a second. Joseph, you have minimally English and French, and I'm assuming it's primarily Parisian French as opposed to any other variant that you understand fluently at this point, correct?
Yeah, there's not much difference in, well, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. The angle that I was going to go for, though, was that since you have fluency for both, you would switch back and forth depending as to what it is that you're doing, who you're talking to, what you're reading, what you're listening to on the radio, whatever it might be. There are some phrases, some idioms, some ideas that don't exactly translate directly back and forth. You kind of have to work at them in order to explain, okay, it kind of means this, but not really. It's kind of like this, but you have to look at it kind of like this.
Well, that kind of underlines what Chris was saying, that a lot of what's said depends on context, and the context is habit. And I guess what do you call that? User? You call that? Yeah, when people are used to understanding a certain way, a certain phrase, that's there's a term for that. I've forgotten what I see. I'm losing my English.
See, folks, it's not just me.
Usage in French,
Yes.
but in English, usage. No, just common usage of a term.
Yeah.
Yeah, common
That's right.
usage.
I'm just having a good smile right now because you went ahead and you said usage, and I'm like, really? It's going to be that simple to just translate from French? That's great. They just
Usage. That's when you give yourself a massage, right?
you keep telling yourself that. If that's the right way that you want to go with it, that's fine.
Yeah. Tech, it's a bit like U-Haul.
Yeah, you all.
Sure, we'll go with that. So triggers, like I said, we never called it triggers when my wife was still with us. So, it was going back 10, 15 years even. The terminology...
Content warning.
Well,
I've
yes.
heard content warning, and I've also heard this one a lot. Stressors.
Hmm.
I've never
Okay.
heard that one.
Yeah.
Well, you're French.
The one that Fuji used to call it was emotional landmines. And I want to stick with that for a couple of seconds because there's always been to me a certain elegance in the way that comes across. Joey, I know that you're not there at the moment. You're muted out. I'm assuming that you're not there for the moment. If you are, you can pop back
I'll
on in
go
a couple
find
of
them.
moments. That's all right. Bridget, let me... Oh, Joe, you are there. Okay. Real quickly, since you were a ground person for military, and Bridge, I'm gonna get you in a second on this one too. The idea of a landmine, I can well imagine from the training that you guys had, from the things that you guys went through, would be an incredibly terrifying concept to have to deal with, quote unquote, live, as it were, as opposed to in training. Yay?
Yeah. Kind of goes without saying.
Yeah, and I know I'm kind of being completely, absolutely in your face, obvious about it all. I apologize, everybody. There's a reason why I'm going this way. And Bridget, you're. I'm trying to remember. For you, it was Air Force, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so for you guys, not nearly the same kind of problem because, well, you guys are typically coming from the rear, coming overhead, doing whatever it is that you're doing, and I'm really simplifying the idea of it all. But for the Air Force, dealing with landmines on a day-to-day basis, so to speak, in a combat area, is not really nearly as pertinent for you guys.
It depends on the job. I was trained as a field medic, so I would have to deal with the aftermath, blood and guts, triage, all that stuff.
Which is
which is pretty dramatic. But my husband, on the other hand, is a Vietnam vet and has been ambushed, so I deal with that vicariously.
Right. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is that we have this idea, generally speaking, about what a landmine is. It's there, it's covered, you don't know that it's there, and then all of a sudden you stepped somewhere that you shouldn't have, and suddenly there it is. And maybe you knew that you stepped on it because you heard a tick, or you felt something crunched the wrong way. Or you see that there is a wire that is now caught on your bootlace. I mean, these are all things that have happened. Yeah, Joey, if memory serves, World War II, was it the Germans that had the wires that were running that had like 3-4 of them or something like that connected all simultaneously?
Yeah, teller mines, I think, but yeah. Well, Germans, Japanese actually were very keen on the idea of just running mines up and down the sides of a pathway, and then at the end of the rows, you'd have one line running between two of them, and each of those would have a line running back, so that you'd get a good column of guys up this path. They'd trip that last wire, and it would set the mines off all the way back along the column of along the formation. So think of it like a crossfire of landmines.
So the point that I'm going for on this is that we can accidentally step on somebody else's nerves, a memory that they had, something that suddenly sets them off and has a visceral reaction inside of them, and never have known that it was there. And in some cases, for some people, they didn't even know it was there. And
now, how can we prepare for that?
You can't.
No.
That's wherein the biggest problem, the why for me in this whole thing has come to be. What can you do about it? How can you? Why did it happen in the first place? And what the hell do you do once it's happened? I think the biggest problem for me about this whole thing is there really isn't anything that you can do, because it's one of those, to use somebody else's expression, one of those unknown unknowns. You had no idea that it was there, and you had no way of knowing what the hell it was, or what the hell you're going to do about it once it's gone off.
Yeah, I see this as kind of like an intellectual. I don't know. There's so much wrong with trigger warnings because somebody who has something, who has a trigger, quote unquote, they have a problem. They had a bad experience for sure, but to make that problem everybody else's, I don't agree with that, and that actually takes away. It's like they're undermining themselves because
Yep.
the fact that they had an experience that created this problem, they're undermining, they're giving the experience itself less importance by highlighting the fact that attention should be paid to them for their sensibilities. And
Well, and that goes back to what I said too. They need to own it. Like it's like if you have you're allergic to shellfish, right? You don't go into Red Lobster and say, "Hey, everybody, get the shellfish away from me." You know that you probably shouldn't go to Red Lobster.
Yeah,
But if
especially
you,
with
but
Or
yeah,
peanut allergies. You don't go into Five Guys Burgers joints because they have peanuts there.
get
They
peanuts.
cook everything in peanut oil. You just
But-
don't go to Five Guys.
But you don't. But it's a little. It's different if you go to say someone's house for dinner. Then yeah, you could say, by the way, please don't serve shellfish because I'll die, right? Or you could say, oh, keep that plate over at that end of the table. That to me is acceptable. But to what we are starting to see, what Joseph said was that they're expecting it to be everyone else's problem and not theirs. Like they're and I actually have a bit of a problem with that with people who have allergies too, where everyone else is told that their kid can't have a cheese sandwich. I mean, I would have starved in kindergarten if I was told that I couldn't have a cheese sandwich for my lunch because that's all I ate. Like literally, I would not have been able to attend kindergarten if my mother was told I couldn't have. And I know parents that they're like, well, children have dairy allergies, so you can't take cheese sandwich. Like that's not cool. And it's the same thing with this whole thing. Like, yeah, it's one thing to read, a very detailed account of someone being raped or assaulted or something like that. It's a whole other thing for you to read a legal document that mentions the word rape. There comes a point where you need to take responsibility for your own issues and learn how to function around everybody else and not expect everyone else to learn how to function around you.
I mean, here's a really prime example of this, and this is one that I think we can all agree on, that different actions could have definitely been taken in this scenario. There was a young man who was going to college, and suddenly he finds himself in front of basically the equivalent of a board of inquiry at the college. Because some girl who he did not know, had never met, wasn't even friends with any of her friends, this young lady had seen him and immediately filed against him because he resembled somebody who had supposedly raped her.
Yes.
And she wanted him expelled because she couldn't handle the fact that somebody looked, regardless of how close he looked, but looked like her rapist. Even though he wasn't, even though he had never met her, didn't have any friends with her, I think they had like maybe one class at most. And the school caved to her.
Yeah.
He wasn't allowed to go within a certain feet of her. He wasn't allowed to go onto his campus housing where he was supposed to be. I mean, she basically ruined his entire college life over this shit.
Yeah, and
it's like, I'm sorry, lady, you need to get therapy if you can't handle that.
That's right. That's right. And as a survivor of sexual assault, I will unequivocally say that is ridiculous. And I am completely floored that a school would do that. Like, it's one thing
I also want to make another point real quick before any of our listeners or viewers say, well, you know, you're a guy, you don't know what it's like. It was like, no. I do know what it's like because I was raped by a woman. And before you can't say it doesn't happen, bullshit, it does happen. Look it up. And I'm sorry, but if I were to go to work one day and we had a new hire and she looked, say, even 90% like my ex, 95% like my ex, almost a spitting image. Okay, I'm not going to be mean to her because of that. I'm not going to tell my company to fire her or tell her to keep 100 feet away from me because she didn't do anything.
That's right.
I'm just
I
can't do that because that's wrong.
That's right.
Just to jump in here, just want to make it clear, like, that in that kind of situation, we wouldn't at all wish to devalue the fact that this lady may well have had a genuine response or trigger to that situation, but and that is very unfortunately something that she has to deal with.
That's right.
On there, and
I'm not devaluing her situation or her response.
But that should not impact someone who is completely unconnected.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So while she would have my sympathies for her situation, it's unfortunately it's got absolutely nothing to do with the young man.
Yeah.
It's a total lack of morals, actually, making a complaint like that. The entire point, what morals are, is basically adapting to society, adapting to those around you, and this kind of complaint shows an ignorance of what others around you are like, and actually a total disregard for that because
Joseph. Yeah. That is something that seems valid on the face of it, but human beings, particularly when they're subject to sort of extreme, emotional stress or whatever, don't think things through in that kind of way.
Yeah.
And this may have been. I don't know the details of the case, so apologies if I get this wrong, but this could very well be something that was done by someone who was not performing at their best on the spur of a moment. It's
I'm not saying
the authorities or organisations should probably have handled it quite differently.
Absolutely.
Under situations of stress, people do weird things.
I never suggested he did this.
And they may otherwise have been very aware of sort of morality or, otherwise be a very reasonable person.
Sure.
In this,
probably in her own bubble.
So I don't think the sort of allegation of sort of ignorance of impact or morality is perhaps necessarily fair in this situation.
Hold on, Chris. First off, it's pretty much safe to say that we all here agree that what happened to her was not right. Okay?
Yeah.
Her emotional response, assuming what happened to her did happen, okay, and that she wasn't making it up, I'm going to assume that she was telling the truth. That the emotional negative responses were what you would expect out of most people, that they would have an emotional negative response to seeing somebody that resembles your rapist, and that she probably was not thinking clearly when she filed against him in the school. But the fact that she carried through with it, and continued to after the fact, and the fact that the school caved to her demands to somebody who didn't do anything. That's where the problem lies. The school should have instead said, listen, if he wasn't the guy who did it, then we can't, using all logic and critical thinking skills, we cannot tell this guy to, stay 100 feet away from you at all times, because he has every right to be here that you do. He has every right to this education that he's paying for that you do. If you cannot be in the same space, then either the recommendation would be to go seek assistance for your trauma, or maybe we could put in a letter of recommendation for a transfer to a different college campus or location and assist you in the process. Something along that lines. But Joseph pointed out very, very properly that it's something that she has to own up to, is that has these responses, that she has to get therapy for them, because she's allowing her responses to negatively impact other people's lives.
Okay, now hold on a second. Joseph, hold on a second, because there's two things we got to do here before we go. I know, I'm sorry, but item number one, I need to stress. I cannot stress this enough on behalf of the entire panel, on behalf of the show. Anyone who has had these kinds of experiences, our heart goes out to you. We do not ever want you to think that we think poorly of you because of something that had happened to you. We don't want you to ever think that we are minimizing any of you for anything that may have happened. And I know it's a giant blanket statement to say it that way, but this is exactly the situation that unfortunately kind of meta revolves around it. We need to talk about these things in order to talk about these things, as stupid and circular as that sounds. And we understand, some of us better than others, that these things are painful to have to relive through. And that's going to be really germane in a couple of moments.
And I think it's almost advice, because, drawing the attention away, it's making a complaint that making other people modify their behavior because of a trauma is actually drawing the attention away from where the attention should be, which is on the trauma itself. That should be dealt with.
Yes.
I don't. Yeah, the context is important, though.
Yeah, Bridget, you were looking to say some stuff before. By all means.
I think context is very important, and I'll give you an example. I live in the Midwest, and deer hunting is a thing here. Okay, and when it's deer season, I expect to see people in the woods shooting deer, carrying, shotguns, what have you. At the same time, I have been witness to a mass shooting in a McDonald's back in the 80s when McDonald's massacres were a thing. Now, if I happen to go into the deer woods and see people with weapons, it's not going to bother me, because I expect that there. It's deer hunting season. People, unless they're using a bow, are going to shoot the deer. But at the same time, if I'm at a Starbucks ordering coffee and I see 5 or 6 people armed, open carry people walk in behind me, that's immediately going to scare the crap out of me. And I'm going to think either they're going to rob the place or shoot some people or take some hostages. So it's context. Now, if people are carrying on a demonstration to open carry, which they are doing in Texas to, exercise their Second Amendment rights, if I know ahead of time they're going to be there and have a heads up, then I can mentally be prepared for that or avoid that situation, take medication, go to therapy, whatever. But if they just walk in behind me and I don't expect it, it's going to freak me the heck out. And so it is context.
Yeah, the context thing, I think, is a massive, massive part about the whole thing. And the externalization, I believe, not being a psychiatrist, psychologist of any kind, I think is one of the probably the second biggest part about the whole damn thing, which is what Joseph was just saying. Internalization versus externalization of whatever these visceral reactions, these triggers, is really what it all comes down to. Back in 1980, let's see how good I remember. I think it was 87, 80. All right, let's call it mid-80s for a second. Here in the U.S., Tipper Gore, the second First Lady, the Vice President's wife, first, second, whatever the fricker title would be, Tipper. It was her name, believe it or not. Her name was fucking Tipper. Yeah, I know.
I remember her.
Who the hell, who the hell calls their kid Tipper? I mean, really, that's just this is trigger warning just waiting to have happen.
Like,
I mean, really. Sure, yeah.
I initially thought it was a nickname.
Yeah, I thought it was too. One of these days. Anyway, but she pushed really, really, really hard for the warning labels that you typically find on music produced today. And it all started off with a group by the name of Two Live Crew, because we had some filthy language with the stuff that they're producing, and it became a whole big the sky is falling, we must protect the children's ears kind of moment. And they basically said, we're putting out music that, people want to listen to, they listen to. They don't. And parents can do, can police their own kids, can't they? I mean, isn't that kind of their job?
You'd think.
Yeah, you'd think that. I mean, heretic women, kids, shouldn't parents be parents to their kids?
Yes. Oh, that drives me crazy. Now, full disclosure, I don't have children, but still, the idea that, the four-legged variety, but, the idea that everybody else has to curb their behavior because they don't want to spend the time to police their children drives me nuts. I can't stand that mentality. If you are a parent, it is your job. And that's why they put out the warning, parental discretion advised, so that you, the parent, can decide whether it's appropriate for your child to watch or not. Not so that everyone else has to, not see or listen to what they want to see and listen to because you don't want to have to take the time to look at what your kid is looking at. It just...
Yeah.
And for me, that label makes things look more interesting to kids.
Well, now see,
it does.
All right, it's funny you put it that way because, Chris, I'm pulling you. I was listening back to one of our old episodes. As a matter of fact, the first episode you came on for, and it was an interesting piece on there. Part of the reason why you told me that you were able to be on with us was because you're a gamer. So your timing is just all over the place because you game with folks in Australia, you game with folks over here in the US, your time is scattered all over the place. You've seen all kinds of warnings on various video games, too. So, does that make it more appealing to see a mature-rated video game on sale versus, I don't know, Spore, for instance?
Chris is not a kid.
No, on there. For 18-rated films and whatever when I was a kid, it may have done. I can't really clearly remember. But I think in things like film and albums, then some kind of parental discretion label is valid. And stuff like, again, video games. Because the way video games are nowadays, you can have hundreds of hours of content on a big production game easily, and you may not get to the disturbing points until hour 165 or something of playing it on there. So it's not reasonable to expect someone to go through the whole thing before checking it if it's suitable for their kids. Some kind of honest description detailing what kind of content's in there from the producers is useful. The same with a film. If it's all fairly they're suitable for kids up until the beginning of the second hour, and then things are likely to go south. Some kind of advisory from the publishers is useful, and this is something about trigger warnings that I think a lot of the need can be avoided with an honest and clear description of what your content is. If your content is an article about a controversial or emotionally laden subject, then as long as that's clear from the title or the description, then people can choose to whether they want to view that content or not. The trigger warnings are more useful where it is not going to be immediately clear that something's going to contain potentially disturbing material from the description.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing Battlefield, you don't need a trigger warning saying, look, this reenacts a war. So, if you're traumatized by war, you probably don't want to play it. It's called Battlefield.
Yeah,
it's a reenactment of a real war.
Yeah,
Think about it.
Yeah, and here's the problem.
Like, obviously, it's not always that clear.
Right. No, I'm a gamer. I'm also my son's a gamer too. I understand completely where you're going with this, but there's the point where you use your critical thinking and your logic, so that if you recognize the fact that you do have triggers and what they are, you can go, okay, this is not for me. This is not for my child. And then, like you were saying, where of teen. I have teen. And it's like, oh, well, scantily clad women. Okay, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, you kind of cut out there for a couple of seconds, but...
Well, I think we got the gist of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, now here's the problem. You go ahead and you put a list of various trigger possibilities on these warning stickers. Well, congratulations, you've just completely meta-screwed yourself, because you've got the black labels that say contains... violent content, or contains bad language, coarse language, sexual situations, drug use, etc., etc., etc. Bridget, I'm pulling it back over to you again. What the hell do you do? I mean, you can't explain what the trigger is without saying what the freaking trigger is.
Exactly, and where it runs into a problem now is, like, if you do have a war simulation, you have people screaming, well, you didn't give a trigger warning for that, and you're thinking, well, does Captain Obvious need to give you a clue, because it's a war sim? How far do you go with these things? And you can't take into account every single possible trigger that someone has. It's not possible.
Not only is it not possible, and this is from someone who broadly supports, say, making people aware of potentially disturbing content, is that if you overuse some warning label, then it becomes that there's no impact to that warning.
Yeah.
It's lost and it's ignored, and that will affect the people that are likely to be triggered or have a bad reaction to something. And also, again, before the show, I was thinking of, as has come up previously, nut allergies. There was a phase where certain manufacturers, rather than going through all the testing and checking their facilities and stuff, and their ingredients, they just kind of put, this may contain nuts, based on the fact that nuts exist in the same universe as the product.
Yeah. I've
on there,
seen that.
and this is this means then that the information that is useless, and it's creating an unfair restriction on people with nut allergies because it's not clearly indicating what does or does not contain that. As for listing lots of things, I mean, I don't know if it's probably very similar here, but I was looking at sort of cinema listings the other night, and within about no more than half a dozen words for each film, normally less, they put something like contains moderate threat and violence, or contains some sexual innuendo or something on there, and so it's fairly brief and bland warning. You don't need in a warning to go into any great detail, just enough to let people know that there's maybe something that they want to check before they show their kids or view themselves.
Yeah, part of the problem with the movies, though, and it's a whole other separate piece that we've kind of touched on before, is that a lot of the warnings for movies are done by a stuck-up group of puritanical family people who will just quietly say, "Oh, this shouldn't be in there. This should be in there, and that you need to warn about." It's a thing. We've talked about that once before. I couldn't tell you where, but I know that we have, because I've got this bad taste in my mouth, and it's not from the coffee right now. Katie had also put, and properly so, by the way, if you'd like to take advantage of the Q&A, please, folks, by all means. Katie had put, quote, "Approach your county commissioners and tell them that they have to stop any public fireworks display because you have citizens that are war veterans with PTSD. See how far that gets you."
Yeah.
All right. We need to recognize, first off, that veterans with PTSD, first off, any of you who might be watching or listening who are vets, first off, thank you. Second, holy shit, I wish there was more that we could collectively do to pay for, the health services that you should have been getting since, day one.
Normally your taxes are paying for that, but it's the government that's underfunding them.
Exactly, especially over here in the U.S., but that's another rail for later, I promise. But for right now, I think the thing that we need to see about wrapping on is that this piece is actually a pretty important piece. The idea that there are triggers that will happen for people that are highly detrimental to those people. Having PTSD from having been in a war zone, to hear let me give you a perfect example. If you heard suddenly, while you were in a deep sleep, if you heard the sound effect, Joey, forgive me, I'm going to put you on the spot on this one, I'm sorry. Would you be woken up from a dead sleep if you were to hear a desert eagle cycled nearby? Would that wake you from a dead sleep?
Probably.
And before you were in, do you think that it would have?
What?
Before you were in the military, before you were in any kind of combat zone, do you think that sound effect would have triggered you to wake up?
Oh, it probably would. The difference being, one, I would probably be, rubbernecking to see where the hell it's coming from, and the other would be the fact that, now that I sleep with a rifle next to me, I'd probably be picking that up.
Yeah. And Bridget, I'm sure that you've heard from folks that have been
It's not weird.
Or still are in, and they've had similar reactions to loud sounds, just fireworks or the sirens going off from police or fire trucks or ambulance. I mean, for you especially, I mean, you, like you said, you're medic, man. Being a first responder, you hear a siren, I gotta believe that suddenly your eyes are whipping around going, okay, what is it? Where is it?
Yeah. And I can tell you from watching reactions from my husband, like on 4th of July, we expect fireworks, and so it doesn't really bother him that much. He can take some Ativan ahead of time and mentally be ready for it. But if you have a balloon suddenly popped in the house or a car drive by and it backfires and he's not expecting it, then he will hit the floor. You know, and I mean, there's just a difference between being mentally prepared to expect it and having it happen all of a sudden.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest reason why I was using the analogy of an emotional landmine before. We don't know that it's going to be there, and it's not exactly a context thing. It's not exactly a timing thing. It's simply a matter of it hits you, and it is simply a force of nature that suddenly absolutely overwhelms you in an instant. They're perfect examples. Heretic Woman, one of your cats starts meowing in such a fashion that you've never heard this sound before.
I am up running around trying to find which cat is it, what are they doing, you know, are they barfing, you know, do we have to go to the vet now, like, it's instant. And well, and even something as simple as shutting the front door. I have lived with cats almost my entire life, so for me, when you enter a home, it's like automatic that I must make sure that door is closed at all times. And when I go to someone's home who doesn't have pets and they're like leaving the front door open, it freaks me the hell out, because to me that's just something you never ever do, because your babies will run out the front door, you know. So even something that simple, it creates a reaction that you don't necessarily anticipate. And for me, actually, I was going to mention this anyway, but for me, with the nature of my issues, being in a medical situation has been very, very difficult for me for many, many years. And I mean, I'm diabetic, I have medical issues, you have to go to the damn doctor. And when I decided to actively go back and be treated and see a doctor regularly, I hadn't been to a doctor in like 20 years, other than, hey, I'm sick, can I have a note to stay home from work today? And the first thing they do is they send you to a lab to get everything done because you haven't been to a doctor in forever. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to go get blood work, whatever. And that's very stressful as it is, but I was, you know, it's blood work. I can, like Bridget said, if you're mentally prepared for what's about to happen, you can generally work through it. Well, the first time I went back, I did not realize that the doctor had also requisitioned an EKG. And the significance of that is that you have to disrobe and have heart monitor crap put on you. I was not in any way, shape, or form mentally prepared for that. And I mean, like, for me, the abuse hasn't been a huge issue for a number of years. You know, it never goes away, but it wasn't a constant presence anymore because it had been 30 years ago. And yet, the minute I got into that cubicle and was like, you need to disrobe and do this and this and this, it was like a switch went off, and what freaked me out the most was that I couldn't control how I acted or felt in that moment. And even though I knew intellectually that this was really a safe place, that I was there for, you know, medical testing that was good, that, you know, needed to be done and all of that, I couldn't help it. And that's, you don't think of that. And in that instant, it was just, you know, boom, I am that scared little kid who's being abused now. and you don't know, and it's amazing. And I just want to bring it back to the, you know, making other people and affecting other people with it. The attendant that I actually had that day, I told her, it was a woman, and I told her, look, I'm an abuse survivor. I am extremely uncomfortable right now. I'm not sure I want to, because she kept telling me to uncover, and I didn't want to be uncovered. And her reaction was very business-like, no, this is a procedure, this is how it's done, this is what needs to happen. She didn't have any empathy to my situation, and I was trying very hard to make it clear where I was coming from and that I really, really needed to do this differently. And the long and the short of it was that I came away from that experience feeling like I had been assaulted again. And because of that, I did actually call and complain, not because I felt that person was doing anything malicious or that that person was trying to be hurtful or any such way, but that I assumed they just didn't understand, and I wanted them to be educated and have some kind of understanding so that they wouldn't act that way again. And so when I called to complain, I wasn't, you know, oh, that, you know, you need to fire that bitch or whatever. It was, this person acted inappropriately. I don't think that they understood, and I really, really need that person to be educated so that no one else has to do that. So yeah, in fact,
yeah, so kind of bringing back a little bit, the externalization of these triggers, what do we do? It's a moment of panic. It's a moment that completely overwhelms our system. Panic is really the only word that for me really encompasses how I've understood it. And it may be a completely inaccurate term. But what do we think that we can do if we've set off these emotional landmines, these triggers on somebody inadvertently? And and we're assuming that this is all inadvertent. It is entirely possible for somebody to go ahead and use these triggers for a completely blatant, disgusting reason. Case in point, people who have continued to specifically say, your name is not Caitlyn, Mr. Jenner. Like I said.
Or how about the, I'm sorry, sir, you know, you couldn't have been raped because women can't rape men.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Now, these are the things that can set people off. What? We don't mean to do it. We're in a situation, we've hit something bad. We can see it. We can see their eyes. They get huge. Their pupils. You know what? I don't even remember which way it's supposed to be when you panic. If your eyes suddenly dilate or if they squint. But we've seen, sometimes we've even been in. I mean, you have a close call on the drive, and you got to pull over because you know your heart's racing. You're going a mile a minute. You're shivering like crazy. It's not the same thing because it's not a physical thing. It's a completely emotional. It's a completely mental thing.
Yep.
What the hell do we do for people if we've done this to accidentally? I don't know. I don't know who wants to hit it.
Well, case in point, if that attendant in the lab had, because, you know, I tried to explain myself and why I was feeling uncomfortable and what I thought my immediate needs were, and I just needed to be covered. And if she had, you know, been shown the least bit of empathy and tried to accomplish what she needed to do while trying at least to be sensitive to what I was telling her, I think I would have come away from that feeling a lot better. It was because, you know, if I all you had was just a paper sheet, and I kept pulling it over myself, and she kept pulling it off me. And if she had just stopped for a moment and even asked me, okay, what's wrong? What can I do? You know, what do you need? I could have told her, I need to be covered right now, and either we need to do this another time, or you need to find a way to do this so that I am covered. But that never happened. So, you know, just empathy, number one. And number two is, you know, what do you need? How can I ease the situation? Like, you're not going to make it go away. So, you know, the person should at least be able to tell you what they need at that moment, whether it's I need to leave right now, I need to go remove myself from the situation, or I need to phone my spouse or whatever, you know. But the empathy would have done a hell of a lot for me, I know.
Mm-hmm.
We all tend to think within our own bubbles, and I think that, you know, your attendant or whatever, she was thinking, well, she wasn't thinking actually, but it's like, I don't feel like this, so I don't understand it, so therefore I won't deal with it. I think that's a completely wrong way of going around it. And,
exactly.
You know, it goes both ways. Because you have to be able to explain to her exactly why you're feeling uncomfortable, but she has to listen.
That's right. And I knew that. Like, I had the presence of mind to realize this is not a normal reaction to somebody in this situation. I need for this person to understand why I am about to freak out here. And I was very open, like, look, I'm an abuse survivor. I've been assaulted previously. Medical situations freak me out. I wasn't prepared for this. This is what I need. And it just went in one ear and out the other. There was no acknowledgement that there was an issue at all.
And she's going to focus on the fact that you're complaining. And that's it. And that's the end of it for her.
Or quote, non-compliant.
Mm-hmm.
Or a problem, or something outside of the norm. You know, the script should go this way. So,
well,
you know.
I mean, just acknowledgement and asking what can I do to help goes a long way.
Absolutely.
Like in a normal course of conversation, if I'm having a conversation with something and I'm talking about something, and they say to me, "Oh, well, that happened to me," like especially if I'm laughing about it or something like that, and my first reaction would be to apologize, you know, but were they to complain vocally about that the fact that they were triggered, that they were triggered, that would completely change the context, because you know, how do you apologize to somebody who's yelling at you?
Well, I know that, you know, one thing that happened to me a few months ago is I was triggered by hearing something in a lecture that I was not prepared for, and people saw me freak out and run out and stuff. And then another speaker came up and said, well, I just wanted to give you a heads up that I'm also going to be talking about X, Y, and Z, and you might want to know that. And that went a long way as far as I could be prepared. You know, it was a friend, so I wanted to go listen to the lecture anyway to be supportive, but I was able to go take some medication and brace myself for it and, you know, be okay.
Yeah.
But that was just a courtesy to come up and say, well, if this bothered you, this other thing may also bother you. So just a heads up, because it's not on the program that I'm going to be talking about whatever.
Yeah, now we keep coming around to the small problem. The meta problem of how much is enough, how much is too much, what should we expect, what is over the top, where is the line between the delicate snowflake versus you're just getting on with and dealing with your life.
Well, it's not their responsibility to take care of me, but it was just a courtesy to say, you know, hi, I realized that, you know, this bothered you, so I just wanted to let you know. And then I told the person afterwards, actually, this was small potatoes compared to this other thing. So, you know, but it's just a humane thing to do. It wasn't her responsibility.
The line should be drawn at the moral the status quo morals. You know, what is generally accepted by society, like things like rape and violence and things like that, are rejected by society. People who are accustomed to things like that can see it, but since the general consensus that these things are bad, you have to think about that. And the warning label should just be a mirror of society's, the average opinion of society.
Yeah. Like, I would never expect a medical laboratory to put up warnings like, hey, some tests require you to disrobe or something. And you know, I expect that happens. I just didn't expect that it was going to happen to me on that day. So if I, you know, again, it comes back to preparedness. Now, and my takeaway from that situation was I need to, number one, be more clear with my own doctor about communication, and number two, when I'm given one of these forms to take to the lab, it's my responsibility to look at the damn thing and see what's being requested to happen. Or when I get there saying, okay, I think this is going to happen, is that accurate? So
or you can call in and ask.
Yeah, exactly. Like my takeaway from that was, number one, that person needed more education. Number two, I have more things that I need to do before I go back into that situation.
Okay, Deborah, because I only know of that situation, what you said on the show, but for in a kind of medical situation on there, because there's the whole sort of informed consent side of the doctor-patient relationship. Anything that's going to say require, say, disrobing, internal examination, anything that that people may be conceivably expected to have some kind of reaction to, is something to be discussed ahead of time with the doctor. And yeah, I've had not to just from past medical examinations where I've needed to disrobe or whatever, and yeah, the doctor said this is the check that we feel we need to do. This is what will be required, and this is what will happen. And that was done sort of in the doctor's office. Offered to have, you know, like another person, like a witness, what's it, a chaperone, present, etc. And it was instantly made clear that if I was not comfortable with any of this, I could either reschedule with another doctor, or look at an alternative. On there, and that's sort of just part of just sort of like the informed consent, making sure the patient knows what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and give them an opportunity to discuss it. And that should not wait until like you're dressed in the paper gown with like someone coming out to you with like EKG leads or other equipment in their hands, because then it's a bit late, and many people may not be able to articulate the situation as clearly as you were able to.
And I did go back and now we have someone called a nurse practitioner here who's like kind of one step from a full doctor. They're basically a doctor that was who I'd seen, and I read her the riot act when I came back. I was like, you do not send me for testing until I know exactly what is going. Now I have a different nurse practitioner now who I won the lottery because she is a former psychiatric nurse with specialty in PTSD. So, and that just happened by fluke. So, you know, that change was a good thing. But yeah, when I came back, that first nurse that I had, I was like, you do not send me for testing until you tell me what I can expect. But see, I had just started to, that was the first time I went back after 20 odd years of avoiding the issue. So that was, that was, again, my takeaway was, okay, I missed that. I should have been more clear with my needs, and now I've learned the hard way that I need to do that.
And just to make sure everybody knows who might be warring at the moment, yeah, Joey had to bow out at this point. He's not feeling that great, so you take good care of yourself, man, and thank you for the time that you gave us. We'll talk with you a little bit later.
I think Heretic Woman hit on a really, really good point. She, right there at the end, right what you said about you realized what was going on and the actions that you had to take.
Yeah.
It does come down to ownership of the recognition that you have a problem, regardless of what it is. But
and whether or not the problem was my fault or not is irrelevant.
Right, that's it. Right, but you recognize that you have it, and you recognize that there's actions you can take to alleviate it, to work on it, to get through it, that sort of thing. Then it comes down to communications. You don't lie to yourself.
Yeah.
And make sure that when you're interacting with other people where this could potentially become a problem, like in your case with the doctors, that you communicate it to them, and then on the doctor's parts, that they listen to the communication, that they register it and process it and try to see from the other point of view. It all comes down to both sides communicating to each other.
Yes.
And that is a big problem in this world.
Yeah, to that end, real quickly, Katie had also put in the Q&A, I have my own trigger, but defining it is extremely difficult. So avoiding it is difficult. I'm going to put what she added to this at this point, but I don't think it's nearly that germane. I am not unsympathetic to what everyone is saying. The important part of this all is that, having our own triggers, we can know that we've got them, but we may not be able to articulate exactly what it is. Chris?
Yeah.
Sorry for cutting you off.
This was also sort of touching on Katie's point there. I'm generally fine with most things. About a year or so ago, I got myself into a situation. I was aware of what the situation was going to be, what was going to happen, the environment, etc. But when I was in the situation, what I was doing, whatever, it was probably like one of the very few kind of sort of panic experiences I've had on there, and something happened that I wasn't sort of expecting. Someone did something that set off some very unpleasant associations that I'd completely forgotten or not didn't expect to come up in that time and place, and instantly I just sort of needed out of that situation on there, and so it's not something that I could sort of plan for in advance, but so you don't always know until what's going to be an issue ahead of time, and that kind of thing that you just need people to understand that there is an issue, even if they don't understand it or know what's causing it. And so luckily I was sort of able to sort of jump out of that situation sort of very quickly and get my head sorted, but it's not at all pleasant.
But you dealt with it since, right?
I've not dealt with it. It's something that I need to explore. But if I need to or choose to get into similar situations, it's not something I want to go into any detail with on the show, then I will take precautions to make sure that that doesn't happen in that way again.
Yeah. There's something I'd like to underline is that
But that is on. That was say a result of say me not appreciating it, and also sort of insensitivity and sort of boundary
insensitivity.
crossing. Yeah, and boundary crossing by someone else.
By somebody. Insensitivity. But were they aware of your...
No, but it became fairly obvious that there would I'd say that that I was having an issue.
So rather than
with their behaviour, yeah.
They dug in their heels.
Yeah, carried on.
Yeah, that's just shit. But
there's also another aspect of it. I took interpersonal communications, and probably a lot of you guys did too, or at least some form of it. And one of the things that I learned that really stuck out to me was that we as people, a lot of us don't pay attention to the nonverbal cues given off by other people. We don't pay attention to the current interactions so much that we should, and end up missing the subtle cues, or in some cases the not-so-subtle cues, that tell us that there is something wrong. And that is something I've been teaching to my son at an early age, is the concept of nonverbal communications, nervous tics, how somebody is using, where their eyes are going, why they're going those ways, what could be possible reasons, their shoulders, their hands, their legs, their body as a whole, and to pick up on these things, how to do so, and still engage in what you're engaged in. And I think that a lot of people, without this kind of training, can miss a lot of things. So there are a lot of people out there that I would assume miss these cues and don't even realize they're setting off somebody's trigger until it's too late.
Normally, then you'd apologize.
Yeah. I mean, I play D&D with a guy who absolutely cannot, for whatever the reason is, I have no idea, but he cannot pick up on nonverbal cues at all.
Yeah, I wonder where that comes from.
Yeah, I don't know either, man.
Because it's either an education, because I think something tells me that innately that we do this, and I think we don't pick up on these because somehow they're not important to us. That's why we don't pay attention to them. Or whether that's through education or never learning.
On my part, it was absolutely education.
But it's an interesting question.
There is the education and sort of the skill development side of it, but there is also quite a large range of inherent ability in how people can pick up on nuances of either verbal or non-verbal communication.
Like, I'm thinking of two opposite examples. Like, for example, somebody who's completely egotistical will just simply ignore somebody else's behavior. But then there's the polar opposite, which is somebody who's really never had much social education, who has never learned to pick up on signals like this. So
yeah,
certainly. I think it also, we're missing another element, I believe. I think another possible element to this is that a lot of people, depending on the culture, mind you, but I've noticed that a lot of people here in the States, in the business environments, tend to hide what they're feeling. They tend to dampen themselves down. And a lot of people continue it even after they leave the workplace, or even before they go to the workplace. They may do it all the time in the house for whatever reasons. The reasons are innumerable, but they do it. And so when somebody who is dampening down on their nonverbal communication, then you're essentially being blinded by them.
Well, they're lying.
Not 100%. Not 100%, but you're removing some of the communications.
And as a sideline, by the way, even though we're getting very close in on the end of it all, Asan, and forgive me, I hope that I got that correctly. By the way, thank you very much for taking some time out and checking us out. Asan has also commented on the Q&A over here. Communication is 80 to 90%. I'm assuming percent is what you meant. Nonverbal. I don't know what the percentage actually is. As an Italian, oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, 100%. Totally. Ask Jake Farwarden. He'll tell you. From an Italian household, oh yeah, nonverbal communication is key. I mean, you can...
I'm speaking New Yorkese right now.
Well, yeah, you kind of are. For example, in an Italian household, it is not at all unfamiliar for a mom to explain at the business end of a slotted wooden spoon. Okay, that's what can happen. And
dude, that's not just Italian. That's not just Italian. Okay.
Well, it was for me. And ask Jake Forward, and he'll tell you. His mom will knock you down. But the point of it is that yeah, we have a lot of cues that we give off and not even realize it. Unfortunately, it's not preemptive for this kind of thing. I've got a pretty good idea as to where I want to go to wrap us up. So, I guess what kind of last minute items do you guys want to drop into this whole thing? Because I mean, something tells me that we haven't really gotten to anything that qualifies as much of an answer for a lot of this. I mean, there's so much. There's just so much. And I know that we don't. Oh, okay. And I know that we don't typically deal with answers to, but something tells me that having talked through this all so far, this thing is just thicker than what we normally would be dealing with. That's for damn sure. The last couple of episodes. So I don't know what kind of last minute things you guys want to throw on this one at this point. So
for me, it's just it's a simple question of adapting one's ability to adapt to society, because we have a social status quo that we normally should educate ourselves, we should learn to adapt to, and well, people who don't pay attention to this are outside of the norm, and people who have triggers are also outside of the norm. So I think there's a bit of work to be done on both sides.
Fair enough.
I think, there's never going to be a right answer for every situation.
No.
And
there's no perfect solution. I'm sorry.
No, there isn't. And I think the biggest thing for people who may have caused a trigger, like I said, is number one, empathy. If you don't even necessarily have to, and you probably won't understand why they're feeling or what they're feeling, but just empathize with that they are having an issue. That's number one. And don't necessarily, like, if you have no idea what you've done or what's caused it, don't harp on that necessarily, because that person may not have known either. Like we've come up with, is that not everybody knows what their trigger might be, or that they have the trigger. Like, I hadn't been I never had an EKG before. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how I was going to react. So, if you've caused a trigger in somebody, that's not necessarily anything you could have prevented either. But just being, like I said, empathetic, and the question, is there anything I can do? And if so, what is it? What do you need?
And
if you're the... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. There's just one thing I'd like to note is that, if you're in front of somebody who is having a trigger event or whatever, or the person having the trigger event, you have to understand that other person doesn't know what's happening inside your head.
That's right.
So the best you can do is explain to them, because you can't expect them to know what's happening in your head. So the best you
That's
can
right.
do is explain.
And when that happened, it's, you know, I didn't lose my shit on that person. I tried to be calm and as much as I could, and you know, I wasn't shrieking or hollering or any of that. I just said, look, I'm very uncomfortable, and here's why, as much as I could. And I understand that you may not even have that amount of control in a situation, but you know, it is important to understand that those people are not mind readers. Those people may not know you at all, and you can't necessarily expect everyone to anticipate how you are going to react in a given situation. And I don't think it's fair for someone like myself to expect other people to anticipate everything. You know, like I said, it's one thing if you're going to show, you know, write a graphic description of a murder, or if you're going to show a picture of someone who's been killed or that kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely, that deserves a warning. But if it's common, you know, everyday kind of thing, then no, you shouldn't expect that from other people.
Yeah, Chris?
I think they've pretty much covered everything I have to say. There's one other thing is sometimes on there if you do inadvertently cause that is a serious issue for you. Yeah, as Deb said, ask if there's anything you can do to help, and let them take the lead. But also be prepared that the best option may be for you to leave the situation and give that person time and space,
Mm-hmm.
and not sort of bug anyone or try and go too deep or like do too much to help in that moment.
Let them talk,
Yeah.
because that's already a help, by the way.
Okay. Bridget, what would you like to finish off with?
I think at the same time, those of us who do have triggers shouldn't expect the whole world to accommodate them. The onus on us is, you know, like has been pointed out, to acknowledge that we do have an issue. It would be nice if people would be more empathetic and, you know, listen to you if you tell them that, yes, you did something that upset me, and then not have them deliberately try to re-provoke it, which you do have jerks out there who will do that. But at the end of the day, we have to live life, and you know, the world is not always a nice place, and we have to not expect them to accommodate us. And I think we see too much of that now with younger people wanting to be protected from everything.
Okay. And Tech, you wanted to be last on that group. Go right ahead.
Well, I wanted to be last because I knew they'd hit on a lot of topics that I was thinking about, and they did. Really, the only thing that's left are one, lying. I don't mean lying like going, oh no, there's no problem. I mean saying it in your head to yourself. Be honest with yourself. You know, when something goes wrong, don't ignore it. Don't brush it off. Look at it. Analyze it. If you can't do it yourself, get the help. You know, start looking around for help to see if you can get help. Pay attention to nonverbal cues. If you have trouble doing that, you know, there are not just courses that you could take at colleges, but there are all sorts of videos, there's all sorts of books, and with the invention of the internet, we have vast resources of human knowledge, vast repositories of human knowledge that's indexed and searchable and available at a moment's notice from almost anywhere in the world that a connection to the internet can be found.
That's fascinating, this internet thing you're talking about.
Yeah. And education, I'm speaking from the point of view as a parent. I have a son. He's 9. I have been giving him an education to supplement what the school system teaches him, because I feel that while our public education is pretty darn good, it's not where it should be. That there's a lot of things that they leave out because they don't have enough time in the day and the year to teach everything that needs to be taught. So my responsibility as a parent, this is how I feel my role. So there are things that I'm teaching him, like I spoke before, about nonverbal cues and recognizing when things seem to be going wrong, even though other people may not be acknowledging it. So you can, doing that helps make the world a better place. And speaking of making things a better place, for example, with our veterans, I was going to say veterinarians, them too, they're traumatized every time they have to put down an animal. Be sensitive to those people too. But our veterans, for example, we have a mission barbecue. It's close enough. And one of the things that they help benefit is the Wounded Warrior Project. And at first, I'd kind of like, what's that? And then I read more about it, and I was like, oh, wow, this is not a social justice warrior kind of thing. This is something that really does help our vets. And later on, come to find out, they actually directly benefited my uncle, who was a vet of the Vietnam War, who in the last I don't remember exactly what year it was, but because of the Wounded Warrior Project, he was able to get certain medical attention that had been denied to him for so long, that he had just been living with and coping with, and finally got, work done. And it's little things like that, So you can make a difference without having to change your daily life. You can just do little acts of kindness, It's the little things. It really is. Just pay attention to the people around you, be willing to communicate, and just, love your fellow man and woman.
I'm going to close this off with a thought about this that we hadn't touched on, but I'd been kind of formulating in my head, which is typically how these closings typically end up, with something that I feel is kind of important that we didn't really think about. Triggers, these emotional landmines, these are memories. These are feelings. These are visceral reactions that we have that are internal to us that, as we said, we don't have any way of stopping them, because they're just suddenly, boom, just there. They just explode all over our psyche suddenly. But it's a memory. And unfortunately, in a lot of times, it's a bad one. It's a traumatic one. Now, I need to correct myself. It doesn't need to be a bad memory. It needs to be a traumatic one. And I want to make sure that folks understand, I don't necessarily mean that it is a bad memory. Trauma typically does mean that, but I mean it in so much as that it's something that is deeply ingrained. It's something that absolutely suffuses the entirety of your being in that moment. It's like being suddenly thrown underwater in cold temperatures for the polar bear swim, and then grabbed completely out of the water suddenly. You're left gasping and shivering, and you don't know what the hell happened to you suddenly, and then, oh yeah, that's what happened. And then you can deal with yourself. And that's part of the problem. It's something that has got people reacting externally. In some cases, to their detriment. I mean, the case about the guy at the college, and I'm going to see if I can find the news report and link that into the show notes so that we can read that over. But I want people to understand who have gone through these kinds of triggers, who have gone through these Cheetos, and it's kind of a comment to my wife. And forgive me, she would understand what I mean by that. I'll explain sometime. But for these landmines, those of you that have gone through them, that have felt them, that have had these things pop on you and you've externalized it, you're doing a disservice to those people that you're doing it to. If you've done something to hurt them that have done nothing to you except be at the wrong place at the wrong time, it's a complete disservice to your fellow people. It's hard in the moment not to strike out. It's hard not to just simply react, to flinch, to be a reflex. But it's entirely your choice if you continue it. We can easily understand that, you react and it hurts and you break down, you cry, you ask for somebody's head because it's so hurtful. And we get that. Everybody at some point or other has had something like that where they want to go ahead and react that way to something. But once the bloodlust has left you, once that adrenaline high has finally crashed, once you've had the opportunity of thinking it over again, if you're going to end up doing something that's going to harm or hurt someone, and it's not their fault, you're the monster now. And that is so not what you want to be. Why do I say it that way? Because you wouldn't be hurting yourself if you didn't have feelings. You got feelings for other people. Just take those into account once you've had the opportunity to think it over. And on behalf of the entire crew, whatever it is that you've gone through, whatever it is that set you off at any one point, if need be, find someone that can help you. There are plenty of professionals out there. There are plenty of low-cost opportunities out there. If you need them, please take advantage of them. Because we want you coming back for more shows. We want you to be safe. As always, everyone, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. We know full well we're not going to be setting any land speed records or winning any awards, but we sure as hell ain't the bottom of the barrel as far as to what we do around here.
Thanks.
As always, thank you to the crap crew over here. Joseph, thank you very much. You have yourself a good morning.
You too, sir.
Calls me sir. Chris, thanks for being fashionably late. Good morning.
Oh, good morning.
I taught him that.
Great to be here again.
It's the mustache.
It is the mustache. And by the way, thank you also very much for making sure that you plugged in your headset to the correct USB port. That would have been a pain in the ass. Unrenowned Tech, thank you much, man. You take good care of yourself this morning. Get yourself some sleep soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. And like I said, folks, you want to make a little difference in a vet's life? WoundedWarriorProject.org. Go for it. You'd be.
Yeah. It's a good one. Bridget, it's morning for you now, isn't it?
It is.
It's about freaking time. It took your sweet-ass time to get to the morning. Have a good one. Thank you, hon. And isn't there anything that you should be plugging right about now? Nothing for you yet?
Oh, there's always something.
Yeah, Bridget, come on. Don't you have anything?
Okay, well, of course, there's Beyond the Trailer Park, Mondays at 9:30 on my channel, Beyond the Trailer Park. That's 9:30 Eastern Time for those of you on the wrong side of the continent. This week, we're going to be talking to the crew from the Waiting for Wrath podcast who are out of Wyoming, and there's actually a Canadian, Aaron, who's from Stratford, cool enough. So I'm going to talk to those guys. There's, of course, mysecularssavior.com. And the apocalypse started last Monday, as you may have noticed. So atheistapocalypse.com. Episode 2 will be dropping this Monday, so you can find out how the apocalypse is progressing.
Time out.
Yes.
Bridget, you're leading the joke again. Don't do that. If you're gonna talk about, you know what? No. If anybody doesn't get the joke, write me an email and I'll be more than happy to explain. Keep going.
Okay, so yeah, atheistapocalypse.com. And I was going to tell everybody how they could send Rafe a postcard. I will give Shujin the actual address because this is in my handwriting and it looks terrible and you probably can't see it on camera very well. And of course, those of you who might be listening later on, hopefully you won't need to send him a postcard in prison. Yeah, a simple postcard. This is the one they were giving out at the non-conference. It just has a picture of some innocently swimming dolphins on the front. Because, let's be honest, the Saudi authorities are dicks, and they will use any excuse to confiscate and or destroy what is sent to Rafe. So we're looking for the most innocuous, benign thing, so like a cute kitten. Don't send a dog. Dogs are haram in Islam, so do not send puppies, but kittens would be nice, or like I said, dolphins. And all...
You can't send snowmen.
No, you can't send snowmen. No, that would be bad.
Or bacon. Don't
or
send bacon.
No bacon. Piglets, bad idea.
You know what? Hold on a second. How about this? There is no problem with, in your opinion, there should be no problem with sending pictures of the skylines of individual people's cities or towns or something like that, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. That being the case, those of you that are actually finding out about this through us specifically, send a postcard that is of your local major city.
That's a good idea.
Because not only will it be something that people cannot make an objection to, but it can actually show, I am from this place, and I see you, and I know. I would like to make sure that people who are doing it through us make that a specific thing, and maybe even in the corner put HCTV in like one of the little corners, just as a thing. It won't make any difference to anybody, but it's a vanity thing. I'm sorry.
And as far as the message, we're just asking people to only say hello. And if you want to do that in another language than English, fine. But just say, I did put a little smiley face on mine. I don't think they can fault a smiley face. And that if they can, yeah, fuck you, even worse. I'm sorry, it's not that time of the... Yeah. It's not one of those, but I'm sorry, Saudi makes me squirrely. So
it sounds like a great opportunity to send a FU to whoever's imprisoning him.
Well, the problem is that he could actually be punished for what is sent to him.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
So no. Otherwise, I'd be totally behind you on that one. But no, yeah. So we're just saying, just send hello, nothing else at all. Well, smiley face should be okay, and that's it. And the idea is that Rafe will at least know that there are people all over the world who are thinking of him and that know he's there and that, support him. So I will make sure that Shujin gets the address and we can put that in the show notes and please send him a postcard. I was saving this so that I could put it up on the show, and then I'm going to put a stamp on that and send it out on Monday. So I think that's everything. That should be everything.
All right. No problem. All right. For those of you that have been keeping track on various medias and various different podcasts, yes, you will have heard my voice a couple of times over on Imaginary Friend Show, Dotcom Podcast. Yeah, I had fun. Yeah, I had stuff that was edited out. So, by the way, just for those of you that heard the one I was on most recently, yes, minus 37 points, a new show record, and yeah, I had to pull Nick's weight. Not the first time, and I think he's a little upset about it. And, rightly so. It's probably a good reason for it. If you want to check that out, of course, the Imaginary Friend Show podcast, that is Jake Farr-Wharton and Nick Morganmore, primarily. Great couple of guys. They've also got a new one that's starting up called... I almost said ours. Wow, that's really good. I'm getting tired right about now. It's called Good Advice. You can go looking that one up. There's plenty of opportunity for that.
Good luck looking that up. Like, that's a hard one to find. Good advice, because the web is full of it. And without Dr. Evil quotes.
Yeah. It's goodadvice.podbean, as in a Java bean, podbean.com, I believe it is. Worst case, I will see about having, I'll make sure that I put that in the show notes over here. I've got some show notes ready.
Freaking laser beams.
Lasers.
Which the funny part of it is one of the stories that we covered was about a Palestine. I forget what it was, but some Palestinian newspaper had said that they had arrested somebody on espionage charges or something like that, and my answer to that was Jesus, but it was a 2,000-year-old piece that they were rerunning from way back when. According to this particular piece, and yes, I'm spoiling it a little bit, it was almost sharks with freaking laser beams on their head. That's not really what the answer was, but it was damn close to that. So you'll need to listen to the whole episode to hear it, because I just couldn't go with it. It was a dolphin. Okay, I'll admit it. It was a dolphin, and then the comment came up about how it should have been Israeli, and it should have had a yarmulke on its head. And the comment about that was the worst case of waterboarding I'd ever heard of.
Oh.
And that made the cut. Some other stuff I said didn't, but that made the cut. Anyway, if you would like to contact us over here on the show, please, by all means, you can send an email over to podcast@holycrapthevlogcast.com. Love to hear you. And you can subscribe to the audio feed over at holycrapthevlogcast.com. We've got all the show links over there. Dallin is slowly and steadily converting us over so that we've got an actual podcast feed. If you'd like to send over a voicemail, you can send it over to... Don't even start with me, man. I've got so many pages over here, it's not even funny. There it is. It's 859-HCTV-554, 859-4288-554. Shut the hell up. See, these are all the accounts that I've got over here. You can see it on the screen over here. Yeah, and the funny part of it is, this is the one that's got all of the email addresses as well as all of the stuff with, like, passwords and such. No, you won't be able to make it out. Why? Because I used a randomizer. Screw y'all. I've got way too much stuff, and I've got stuff I've got to figure out. Anyway, we got to get our asses.
How do you really feel about that?
I briefly talked with the crap crew about the kind of day that I had today in generalized terms. I'm going to tell them... No, actually, I told them about some specifics. I feel just wonderful.
Yeah.
And if you can't see my face right about now, congratulations. Right? Harry,
I feel happy.
That's kind of a Joker smile there, I think.
Oh no! Oh no!
Shijin, man, you have the perfect face for podcasting.
I do. I do. Well, it was a choice between either me or Dave Foda, and really, I'm
Shots
pretty
fired.
over two.
There have been shots fired.
And by the way, Foda, read my finger. There you go.
Can you turn that up for me?
I can even turn it up to 11, but really, we've run out of time. So as always, everybody, thank you very much for your time. You take good care of yourselves. We'll be looking forward to talking to you again next week. I will figure out what we're going to talk about as soon as I can, get the word out as quickly as I can. Follow us on G+, Twitter, Facebook. We're getting closer and closer to 100 likes on the Facebook page. Yeah, I know it's slow going, and I don't promote it a lot, and that's admittedly my fault, but you know what? A little at a time, little bit at a time, little bit at a time. Sooner or later, we're going to be an overnight success in about 3 years, which is fine by me. I got
30. You mean 30 years?
No, I mean 3. I hope.
Sure.
Hey, we're over 75 episodes at this point. We're beating Incredulous. So, don't even start with me.
It's all about content.
It is. In the meantime,
Or lack of.
you all take good care of yourselves. Take
Shots
good care of
fired.
yourselves. We will see you soon.
Man
As always,
down.
I wish you all the peace I no longer have. I wish you the strength that I've learned. I wish you well. Of course, as always, I say my goodnight for you, and I say my goodnight for my lady too, because 10 years on, I'm still in love. Matane Fujin. I love you and I miss you. Dream of me. Till the next time we get together, everyone, as always, good night.